Hey everyone, it's Q&A Tuesday. As usual, guys, first and foremost, thank you for all the questions that are coming in. After you finish watching this episode, comment below with any questions or rebuttals to the questions I may have answered. Contrary to all belief, I love criticism, and if I get something wrong, I'm not perfect either. So do comment, correct, ask questions on top of questions. I'm more than happy to discuss all those topics via this particular series. The first question from Ramiz Salman. Great video, Roman. Thank you. I wanted to ask you, when you buy pre-owned watches, do you have them authenticated or are you confident enough not because you trust the seller? We do buy pre-owned watches all day, every day. We take watches in trade. We buy them outright. So pre-owned watches is a huge part of our business. It always has been. What can I tell you? When it comes to authenticating watches, there are very few occasions I will go out and physically have the watch authenticated by someone else, just based on the experience I have in the business. Initially, when I started, I wasn't that knowledgeable in watches, but I could certainly at that point already tell a fake from a non-fake because some of the fakes are pretty bad. When I do receive a pre-owned watch, I have the watch serviced. So with that alone, it goes to my watchmaker who opens up the watch and who could right away tell me that, hey, something is fishy about this watch, it's a Chinese movement, et cetera, et cetera. And that's if it gets past my initial check when I buy the watch. If I'm physically buying the watch and it comes and I put it in my hands, 999 out of 1,000 times I will be able to tell you that the watch is fake. Now, of course, there are better fakes out there that can fool a seasoned professional at any given moment. And those are watches that are specifically made to pass as real watches. They get out in the market as quote-unquote pre-owned watches. Oftentimes you'll see them a little scratched up and worn. Odds are they will not have box and paper with them, and that's the first red flag. Whenever I purchase a watch that doesn't have original documentation with it, I have ways of calling that watch into the manufacturer, saying, hey, does this serial match up the model? Hey, is this watch ever been stolen or reported stolen, et cetera, et cetera. I do my due diligence that way if at a glance I see that the watch is real, but yet it doesn't have documentation. And even still, can I be duped at that point? Absolutely. For those that maliciously manufacture one-to-one fake watches and get them out on the market as real watches, oftentimes do a good enough job to pretty much fool any seasoned professional. However, it is absolutely next to impossible in order to replicate the case as well as the movement and the parts inside the movement. Or if they do that, it will not pay because it will cost them a lot of money in order to produce a watch that's one-to-one. So oftentimes, yes, the case may be perfect. Yes, the numbers may even check out because they can take numbers from an original watch and put it onto the fake one. But the movement will never, ever check out, as well as the history behind the watch. So yes, most of the time, I'm the guy or my business partners or anybody that buys watches here who's knowledgeable enough to be able to tell a fake from 50 meters away. If we are not sure of something, if we feel like, oh, this may be one of those really, really good fakes, it's next to impossible for a fake watch to go through my hands. Has it happened to me before? Absolutely. And you mentioned, are you confident enough because you trust the seller? Absolutely. I buy my watches from reputable sources. I buy them from other dealers where there are repercussions. If, God forbid, a fake watch or something is wrong, or a stolen watch came through somebody's hands, I buy the watch, I have an invoice. If something happens, I'll go back to that dealer who is going to be an honorable dealer, is going to honor the issue, whatever the issue may be. If I'm buying from a private customer, oftentimes these guys provide me with original receipts and where they bought the watch from, so I know where the watch actually came from. Has it ever happened to us that we were sold a watch that was fake and we sold it and ended up being deemed fake without us knowing about it? Yes, in 15 years that I've been doing this, it happened to me once on a PAM 111. And this is what the fake guys usually do. They usually pick the easiest, most plain watches out there to fake. And a PAM 111 is a very plain Jane watch with a plain Jane movement in it. And it got past me. And one of the things that we actually put on our website, somewhere in the About Us section, this is what I originally did on the website when I wrote that 15 years ago, said, we guarantee our watches to be 100% authentic. Should you receive a watch from us that is fake, we will refund you twice your purchase parts. That's the guarantee I put forth on my website. Now, the gentleman that bought the watch from me, he actually contacted me about a year later when he went to get the watch service and they opened up the watch at Panerai. Panerai themselves told him that this is such a good fake that if we didn't take the movement entirely apart and saw there were a couple of stamps missing or a couple of numbers missing on the movement, we would probably deem that watch to be real. Now, the gentleman, I knew him well. He was a good client. He didn't make me give him back twice his money, but I did indeed go out buy a brand new watch of the same watch. He bought the watch pre-owned. I ended up going out and buying him a brand new one and replacing the fake that I got. And a year later, I went back to the dealer that I bought the watch from, and he ended up refunding me my money and said, I was duped. It's a crying shame, but both me and you were duped. So yeah, it did happen to me. It happened to me once early in my career. Hasn't happened ever since. Here's a great question from Bruna Overstreet. Hey Roman, I'm a 14-year-old watch geek and I currently wear a Tag Heuer Carrera. But when I wear my watch, I wear it to appreciate the art of a fine timepiece, but everybody asks me if it's a Rolex. Also, people who know nothing about watches in my class are all into the hype of watches and try to show me up. What should I do? Well, Bruno, he reminded me of my business partner, Arthur. He bought his first watch when he was 14 years old, and he paid for it himself. His first watch was a Bon Marché. By the time he was 16 years old, he actually ended up with a Rolex Daytona in his collection. Granted, back then they were trading at about $6,500. He also had a Rolex Datejust, and he had a Cartier. He worked hard for everything that he bought, and he was also often made fun of. Hey, here's a 15 or 16-year-old kid, you know, wearing a $5,000 watch. Where do you get off doing that? Blah, 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 blah. Is it fake? And so on and so forth. My answer to you is that, you know, haters are going to hate. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a fancy pair of shoes, drive a fancy car, or wear a fancy watch at a young age. And guess what? The fact that you have on a Tag Heuer and the fact that at 14 you're able to show appreciation for fine horology, to me it's impressive as all hell. And as far as all the other kids, you can just tell them to go to hell and ignore. I'm the guy that always, if somebody tries to make fun of me, I'm somebody that just comes right back with a smart remark to sort of shut them up. But nevertheless, for the most part, you can just ignore them. Enjoy your watches. I hope your collection grows as you grow older, and enjoy your tag meanwhile. Next question is from I can't see.
Oh man, look at my life. I'm a lot like you.
Next question, a very good question, comes from Redha Harfau. And I apologize if I mangled your name. Hi Roman, the best comment you made was investing in your kids' education. If one of them fancy a luxury watch, is it right to give to them? Is there a minimum age you think you would be spoiling them in a negative way? That's actually a very great question. It's actually a question I've been battling in my head for quite some time. I do have 3 children, 15, 10, and 3. And having grown up with absolutely nothing, being raised in a 400 square foot apartment in Brooklyn, New York, along with my sister, makes it very difficult to go from nothing to something and then having the kids of your own and not spoil them. And give them things that you didn't have, give them the childhood that you didn't have, and so on and so forth. It's a battle that I have within myself, and it's a battle that I fight constantly because I always want to go out and buy something for my kids, an extra toy, an extra cool pair of shoes, et cetera, et cetera. But yet I'm lucky enough to have a woman by my side that can ground me. And she's also one that was not born with a silver spoon in her mouth and also raised poor. So we kind of come from the same background. So it's nice to have somebody by my side to sort of pull me back down to earth whenever I get stupid thoughts in my head, like, you know, maybe buying my 15-year-old a Rolex. Is there a minimum age where I feel like I can give someone a gift such as an expensive watch? I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's more of an event thing. So I first thought about, you know, well, my son's going to graduate high school in a couple of years. Should I give him a fancy watch as a gift for graduation? No. Will I buy my kid a car when he gets to be 16, and a nice car at that? My first car was a 1982 Ford LTD station wagon, and I bought that used for, I don't know, $1,500, I think. And my dad did help me with insurance and so on and so forth. My son's first car is going to be the small Tesla, which is a much more expensive car, but I'm doing that not as a gift, I'm doing that as a peace of mind, because the Tesla, well, really not my peace of mind, my wife's peace of mind, because that particular Tesla, you can control the speed at which your child goes. You can also know where your child is at a given time, and it also has some of the highest safety rankings out there. So my whole concern with that is not going to be my kid driving a cool car like a BMW, for example, but a safe car, a car that's absolutely safe, and a car that actually will not allow my kid to go 120 miles an hour on the freeway. I'm blessed and I'm lucky enough to be able to afford to buy him the car because it's still a fairly expensive car. Yeah, it's not as expensive as the bigger Teslas, but it's still fairly expensive in comparison and would probably be considered to be an expensive car for a first car. But no, I will not give my son a watch at the time he graduates school. Now, my 15-year-old is actually a bit of an entrepreneur himself, and he runs his own business on the side. I won't get into the details on that. And he makes a heck of a living part-time doing what he does. He also resells stuff online. By the time he finishes high school, most likely he'll be able to afford to buy himself his own Rolex, should he choose to do so. But at the same token, he's a conservative kid. He knows the value of money, which is how we raised him. He knows that it's not about the money, it's about other things such as family life, etc. And so I don't even know if I see him buying himself a Rolex at that time. And the feasible time I see myself giving my kids a gift such as that is perhaps when my son graduates college or my daughters graduate college. A wedding gift, I feel, is a very appropriate time to give an expensive gift as such. But nor I or my wife would probably approve giving a 15, 14, 16, even an 18-year-old an expensive watch as a gift, no matter how much money you have, because I feel like that puts them in the position of, oh, easy come, and they will not really appreciate the value that's behind them. Until you give somebody a gift that's $10,000, I feel that child needs to understand the value of $10,000, how hard it is to earn $10,000, and at which point in your life should you spend $10,000 on an expensive toy based on what you already have and based on your lifestyle at the very moment. Let's see, what else do we have? A1, like the Stay Sox. Love your videos. Thanks for sharing your insights. Thank you. On your point about limited editions, Richard Mille sells diamond editions of their watches. Do you think these will hold their value? Told you guys before, I don't have a glass ball when it comes to values of watches, and everything goes up and down usually. I have been an avid fan of Richard Mille's in the way that they produce their watches, control productions, and put their watches out there, so I don't feel like the bubble is going to burst anytime soon. However, when it comes to diamond pieces, specifically men's diamond pieces, you will not find as many clients for diamond watches as you will for a plain Jane watch. Not a lot of guys will wear diamond watches. I'm one of those guys that does like diamond watches. I wear the Royal Oak 39mm Chrono all diamond case watch. I happen to love those watches, but that watch doesn't hold its value just as well because not a lot of guys out there are comfortable wearing diamond watches. Most guys feel that it's way too flashy to wear diamond watches. Therefore, there's not as much demand when it comes to diamond watches, and same fate holds for Richard Mille, even if it's just a diamond bezel. So to answer your questions, no, they don't hold their value just as well, which is why you can find diamond pieces out there at somewhat of a discount, where its brother without the diamonds sells over retail because there's so much more demand for that. When it comes to ladies' diamond pieces, they won't hold their value as well either, and that's really due to the fact that ladies tend to love jewelry and other things, and a lot of ladies could care less for a watch. In fact, they look at watches as jewelry, where men look at these things as horological marvels, and rightfully so. Less demand, worse resale value. Richard Mille could be an exception, again, even when it comes to ladies' watches, because they make so little of them. For example, the RM007s, not the ones with the full diamond case, because they're ridiculously expensive, but just the plain Jane ones with just a diamond on the inside of the dial, those things trade at pretty much retail because there's not enough supply, and therefore they do hold their value. But again, remember, holding value all depends on the numbers of production. If Richard Mille tomorrow decides to produce twice the amount of watches that are producing today, the values will go down. It's about supply and demand. Right now, the supply is so short that even some of the diamond stuff is still holding their value fairly well. Less demand, less of a resale value. Hope that answers your question. Take one more before I get out of here, and this one comes from Uber Carter, who's kind of become a regular. Do you believe that any company in the next 10, 20 years will be a threat to Rolex in terms of being the #1 selling brand? And if so, what do you consider to be the potential hot selling underdog? It's a tough question to answer, number one, because you're bringing up the #1 brand, and I've always told people, if I had to pick a #1 brand, Rolex is up here, and then whatever #2 brand is like way down here. They're not even close in terms of sales, in terms of popularity, in terms of people knowing the brand, and so on and so forth. But this is a question that you have to look at from a price perspective or a price point perspective. You have to understand there's a slew of Rolexes out there and have been for years, before the retails kind of climbed up, even on the steel pieces, where Rolex was somewhat affordable. If you go back to the vintage pieces that I have, those things used to sell for $200, $300 in the 70s. Not so long ago, the Daytona retailed under $10,000. Not so long ago, the stainless steel Samaras were retailing around $5,000. So these watches were very, very affordable. And as the retails move with times, again, even though some of the stainless steel model are around 10,000 and slightly over 10,000, in comparison to others, they still become an affordable brand. Now, I'm not talking about the Presidents, I'm not talking about the Pearl Masters or the expensive pieces that they make, but if you take a look at their stainless steel lineups, or even some of the two-tone lineups, the watches are still relatively affordable for a #1 selling watch brand in the world, arguably, right? So, look, starting from the plain Datejust, so the Air Kings, to the Datejust, to the Datejust 2, Submariners, and so on and so forth, again, affordability is key, and the show-off factor. Everybody knows when you have a Rolex on your wrist. So, here comes the question, who is the underdog, let's say, based on today's watch market? Well, the underdogs are simple. It's the watch lines that are able to sell their watches within the sort of the same price range, but at the same token that are recognizable. So there's plenty of brands out there that make watches under $10,000 that are affordable, such as IWC, such as Jaeger, such as Glashütte, such as Blancpain, et cetera, et cetera. But these are not the brands that are rightfully recognizable right off your wrist. Nobody really off the top of your head knows, hey, this guy's wearing a Blancpain. But everybody can tell that, hey, this guy's wearing a Rolex. So the other brands that are very recognizable from afar, so to speak, would probably be Omega, Breitling, Panerai. These are the three brands that are going to be, quote unquote, that underdog in terms of affordability factor or the price range factor, and in terms of being recognized on your wrist. Breitling and Omega have always been, quote unquote, that other Rolex, because Breitling's a big, shiny, you can recognize them by their bracelet, by their case size, by the bezels, much like you do with the Rolex. So Breitling was always sort of that, quote unquote, other Rolex. And so was the Omega, specifically the Speedmasters. People really, really know what a Speedmaster looks like, or a Seamaster. Plus there's the whole James Bond thing, which I love. So, yeah, James Bond is my favorite guy in the world.
Rolex.
Omega.
Beautiful.
In terms of being an underdog of sales, sort of being king of the watch world and so on and so forth, it's really difficult to come up with a brand in regards to that, because then you open up a can of worms. We're talking about yearly sales, or we're talking about overall value of the company itself. A lot of these brands are under a group, so it's very hard to evaluate a single brand versus a brand that's part of a group like the Richmond Group or the Swatch Group, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to look at it from a perspective of recognizability. Is that even a word? Yeah. I'm going to look at it in terms of that, and I'm going to look at it in terms of affordability. And I would probably say for someone who can't go out there and afford a $10,000 Rolex, they will be just as satisfied with a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 Breitling or an Omega. And I think these are going to be those quote-unquote underdogs that sort of stay in line with Rolex for years to come. Will any of them ever beat out Rolex? Again, never say I have a crystal ball, but I'm going to say no. I'm going to say Rolex is going to continue staying where Rolex is. It's positioned itself in the market so well that I don't see anybody knocking them off their throne. It's just not going to happen. Sorry. Anyway, guys, thank you so much again for joining me this Tuesday. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you're already not subscribed. Also, turn on the notification bell so you know when my videos are coming out. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday.